Scotland. A paradise for wildlife and a cameraman's dream. This country, with its rugged mountains and endless coastline, has produced a generation of the best wildlife cameramen in the world. For decades, 5 filmmakers, all rooted in Scotland, have travelled the globe to bring home incredible images, shaping our understanding of the natural world. How did these men learn the incredible skills needed for catching the natural world in action? What is it that prepared them for travelling the globe and enduring the toughest of environments? In this series, these 5 cameramen will share their extraordinary stories and the secrets of their trade. Secrets often learned from filming wildlife in the wildest parts of Scotland. But this time, the camera is on them. When filming land mammals, large and small, our cameraman must take on every kind of environment. Through jungle, savanna, mountains, and forests, they track some of the planet's most remarkable creatures. My career has rested on the resilience and ingenuity of men like these. The shots they capture give us an intimate insight into life in the natural world. Scots-born Gordon Buchanan is an expert at forging relationships with land animals. He has filmed some of the planet's rarest and most dangerous animals. Sometimes getting too close.
Got to be, well, I'll show you how close it is. Too close.
Gordon is famous for his work with big cats. In the grasslands of the Masai Mara in Kenya, he spent time following a family of leopards. Filming these shy animals takes skill and patience.
Leopards will do their utmost to stay out of sight. So if you do manage to find a leopard, it is incredibly exciting because, you know, you just getting a glimpse of the animal, you know that it's special. If you're able to stay with it for a length of time, you know that every second that you're with it, it is an intimate moment.
Spending extended periods of time getting to know big cats is a unique privilege. Gordon had the good fortune to film Bella the leopard for 3 years.
I got to know this one cat, and it was amazing. You know, it was like seeing an old friend when I went back there. On this one occasion, because we were hooking up with Bella every single day, we knew that she hadn't eaten for 4 days, and that's sort of getting to the point where the survival of her cubs, her own survival, depends on her being able to run something down and catch it. When it comes to watching something like a leopard hunt, you know, it is fantastic because you are seeing one of these rare spectacles, something that's incredibly difficult to see and even harder to film. Those are the shots that you go to bed at night time just kind of smiling to yourself and kind of, I suppose, quite smugly, because the chances of messing up are really, really high.
Gordon first learned about wildcat behaviour in his native Scotland. His big break came when he spent a year filming wildlife, including Scottish wild cats, in the Cairngorms.
It was probably one of the most challenging years that I've ever had. I definitely learned to become a filmmaker, I think, just in that period of time, because I had to make these 3 half-hour films, and having never done that before, I was just learning on the job.
His mentor at the time was naturalist Dick Balharry. 15 years later, they meet again in the Cairngorms.
I remember when you came here, you were so keen and really up for everything, and strong and able. Where are they? Sort of thing, we'll go and get them. How do you feel when you come back here to see this land and then compare it to all your sort of world jaunts?
I could spend a happy day up in the Cairngorms as happy as I would be in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, but I think there's something special about Scotland, and I don't think that's just because I'm Scottish. There's a sort of magic and a mystery to a lot of what Scotland has to offer, and the more I travel, the more I see that Scotland is unique.
These special landscapes feed a passion for wildlife. They proved an effective training ground for another Scotland-based wildlife cameraman, Mark Smith. From the icy wastes of the Antarctic, via the Australian outback and the remote Falkland Islands, Mark has filmed all over the world. But it was Scotland he fell in love with and decided to make his home.
I wanted to come up and live here on the West Coast because I think it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. I'll go on filming trips, to Africa or to Asia and spend 6 weeks really sort of banging your head against a brick wall trying to get the shots to look nice. And the light's so harsh. And then you come back here and you think, why aren't there more films made around here? Because the quality of the light is just fantastic. And you go into some of these forests, some of these woodlands, and it's the most beautiful, beautiful thing you've seen, much more beautiful than the place you've often been out away filming.
Like Gordon, Mark learned the essential skills of wildlife filmmaking in the Scottish Highlands. He spent 7 months in beautiful Glen Affric near Loch Ness, tracking and filming red deer.
We got a camper van and just kind of immersed ourselves in the place, spend time with the animals and get to know them, sort of get inside their head a bit.
Mark has returned to Glen Affric to see if he can find his old friends.
Everybody thinks that filming wildlife in Scotland or the UK is it's kind of easier for some reason, but actually it's completely opposite. I mean, most of the animals here are really often very frightened of people because there's a lot of people in the country and they're often been hunted, and so really starting to film in Scotland is a great kind of training ground about getting close to animals. You can get close to a lot of the wilder animals in Scotland, and you can probably do it in most places in the world. And red deer, generally, they can be the most difficult animals, ever to film. And there's another one coming. Fantastic. So that's 2 of them. Those one behind, yeah. That's 3 of them. Nice. Oh, he's even nicer, this one.
We're just looking over the top at her.
Northern Pakistan in winter. A most unforgiving landscape with challenging terrain, but home to the rarely seen snow leopard.
snow leopard was kind of the holy grail of wildlife filmmaking. There had been films made about snow leopards, and good films as well, but they'd always been in places where it was almost impossible to get close to them. You didn't really sort of feel intimate with the animal at all. We turned up in this place after some extraordinary journey, some kind of boy's own adventure, getting over these 12,000 foot passes to get into this valley in winter.
Christmas Day was spent on a fruitless search for the elusive leopard. Then, 5 days later, he received some promising news.
We just got a report that there's a snow leopard up on the ridge. We're too low where we were before, so just trying to get some height to get a better view of it. People on the radio said it was just up the valley on the cliff on the left here. When I first saw that snow leopard, I just could not believe it, because you can imagine you're in this incredible mountain environment. Every hour of the day you're scanning this hillside, these rocks, for something that looks like a snow leopard, and after 2 weeks, 3 weeks of that, you just think this is never going to happen. These animals don't exist. And then, I mean, for your binoculars suddenly to be filled with that animal looking straight at you, it was just extraordinary. And actually, the last thing in your mind at that moment is filming it.
For 3 weeks, he filmed the behaviour of mother and cub in intimate detail. But he still lacked the prized hunting sequence. On the very last day of the shoot, they spotted an injured markhor next to the leopard's cave.
We thought, if it ever is going to happen, this is a chance we've got to film a real proper hunt. And we had about 2 hours left of daylight. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she went to the corner of the cave, looked around, and immediately saw this markhor. And she went into this hole, stalking up the hillside, and got to this point where she could obviously see the markhor, and she disappeared behind this rock. I'm looking through this viewfinder. It's a black and white viewfinder right on the end of a long lens, and you think, if you take your eyes off this rock now, and then she comes out, you'll never find her again, because you cannot find anything in that landscape. And then suddenly she went. My memory, it took several minutes. The whole shot's actually over in a few seconds. It was an incredible feeling of achievement. Finally, you've done it. I know it's probably 5 seconds of real elation before you start worrying whether it's in focus and all the rest of the worries that you have after it.
Mark was the first person ever to film a snow leopard hunting. Gordon Buchanan also bagged the filming first when working in the unforgiving bamboo groves of China. Pandas are famous for mating only rarely. Some pairs only mate once in their lives. Not surprising then that the act had never been filmed in the wild before.
Pandas, China, bamboo. I was thinking it would be, I don't know, maybe just kind of big groves of bamboo with pandas in there somewhere. No, this was sort of incredibly steep mountains covered in the thickest bamboo ever. And bamboo is the worst thing to walk through. It snags on everything. It twangs back, hits you in the face. It trips you up. It is impenetrable. So you get up to the top of the mountains where the pandas were at that time of year, and you just sit and listen. If you could hear pandas off in the distance, you could start working your way towards them. You call across the valleys, males letting other males know that they're there, females letting males know that they're there. And we really struck lucky. We just happened to be there at the perfect time, and managed to film this sequence. It was so difficult going through the bamboo that we'd actually ditched the tripod sort of, days and days before, because it was impossible. So I'd shot that entire sequence sort of on my shoulder, which isn't ideal when you're shooting wildlife. That's kind of sort of page one of the wildlife filmmaker's handbook is use a tripod. But sometimes the behaviour outweighs the sort of technical kind of quality of the images.
Wildlife cameramen need an in-depth knowledge of animal behaviour. But they can't know every animal they're asked to film.
One day the phone went and the producer said, "Love if you could go off and try and film a Kalugo sequence for us." I was, "Yeah, sure, yeah, great." I haven't got a clue what this is. And I thought, as sort of, I'll try and get some more information. Because so were you thinking of filming to Borneo? I was like, okay, good, we've got a kind of sort of, and I didn't know what Kalugo was, and I think I kind of sort of quietly went over to my computer and sort of tried to tap in, like, how would you spell Kalugo? So then it popped. Yes, of course, people call them the flying lemur, don't they? Yes, but they don't fly and they're not a lemur. So suddenly I was looking at an image of this really peculiar looking creature.
Filming the Kalugo was a significant challenge. It's one of the world's most camouflaged animals and only comes out at night.
They blend in perfectly, they kind of, these flaps of skin that go from their arms to their legs that kind of actually flap in against the side of a tree, so when they're lying against a tree trunk, they just become part of the tree. They could be like 50 feet up in the trees and then just sort of boings, just jump off the tree and glide. So I thought, God, okay, how do we do it? But then we just sort of began to understand the animal, how they move, what they were likely to do, so the unpredictable became slightly predictable. Sad thing about filming wildlife is that the moment that the most incredible things are happening, you are terrified about messing it up. And it's a shame, because I've been lucky enough to see lots of incredible things, but at the time I find it's really quite stressful, because this has never been filmed before. It's a unique piece of behaviour, so it has to be focused and composed, and sort of the camera has to be running. They have to make sure that is that battery about to run out? So there's kind of not that many things to think about. But when you combine it with something rare and unusual, it spoils the experience a little bit to observe that. But then I suppose if you manage to record it on tape, you've got the rest of your life to sit back and watch it again and again.
A memorable shoot for Mark Smith was with wolves in the sparse open wilderness of the Arctic.
The real challenge of filming these Arctic wolves up on Ellesmere Island in the high Arctic was the fact that the landscape is so huge. So you have to go through this whole process of surveying your landscape, working out where you can go. Say, for instance, the river, you have to work out how deep the river is. The only way we could do it, we had to take our trousers off and our socks and shoes and walk in this river to see how deep it was, and put little cairns at each crossing point, which is this braided river. So the next time, you can just drive straight across and follow them. when you're following this pack, they've become very used to you. I mean, they're quite naive wolves anyway. They've not really seen humans before. So you'd be going along with them as they're on a hunt. So they're going fast through the landscape. You're there trying to keep up with them. And at one point, the tamest of the whole pack came right up next to me, lolloping along, and she'd be within 3 feet of the quad bike, and she'd be like, look up at me as if to sort of say, you know, why are you so useless? Why are you going so slowly? It was the most amazing moment.
The golden rule for wildlife cameramen has always been to simply observe nature and never interfere.
Ignore me. Get away.
But when he was working on a series about North American black bears, Gordon broke this rule several times.
Part of me is if I want to pick her up and give her a big cuddle.
The bears were being studied by controversial animal biologist Dr. Lynn Rogers, who adopts a more hands-on approach.
This is all part of Lynn's unconventional technique, which is by giving a bear a few handouts that they'll let you, well, touch them, so you can put a collar on them and follow them and just observe the natural behaviour. And to be honest, I was really dubious about it at the beginning, but now I see it, I really see that it is quite incredible what Lynn has been able to do.
Touching a wild animal was something that I kind of didn't ever want to do. I never wanted to get hands-on. I was quite happy to watch and observe. It took time for me to figure out what it was all about, and I saw very quickly the benefits of, you know, this little system that was in place. You know, what you could reveal about those animals' lives.
It's quite easy to forget what an amazing being this is. One must always remind oneself that they are big, wild animals.
When one of the mother bears abandoned her cub, Gordon was faced with a dilemma, and one which took him into further controversial territory. Should he intervene and save her life?
It wasn't an issue for me. I could see that this was a bear cub that needed help, and I thought, well, forget this line. By helping this animal, seeing it through a tough time, just a couple of weeks, giving it a little bit of food is going to make the difference between life and death. We did everything we could to keep her alive, and she survived.
A few years before getting close to the black bears, Gordon found himself in a much more dangerous situation on a night shoot in Sri Lanka. He was surrounded by a group of crocodiles and leopards who were fighting over a wild boar carcass.
About 12 crocodiles come in and this massive tussle with the carcass and dragged it into this thick lantana bush, and you just couldn't see anything at all. And I sat there and kind of weighed up my options, and I thought, I'll maybe just encourage this carcass out of the bushes a bit. It's at least a place where I could see it, and a place that I could film it. So I walk, sort of picking my way between the crocodiles that were there, leant into the bush and grabbed a hold of this huge pig's trotter and start sort of pulling it out. I kind of tugging this thing, and it must have weighed about, easily 12, 13 stone. And I sort of snagged and pulled it out, and I just sort of looked up and I had a head torch on, and just on this little kind of rock there was 3 fully grown leopards just watching me. And I thought, God, I remember what our domestic cat was like if you went anywhere near its food when it was eating. And I thought, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. So I just kept on pulling this thing and pulled it clear of the bushes. And by the time I actually switched the camera back on, the leopards were back on the carcass and happily feeding away. I wouldn't say I was fearless, but I get a buzz out of doing things that are a little bit dicey.
Gordon was only able to capture this extraordinary sequence with the use of an infrared camera. Huge advances in technology have helped unlock the secrets of animals' nocturnal behavior. Another piece of kit that has revolutionized wildlife filmmaking is the camera trap.
The technology in a camera trap is really quite straightforward. It's a passive infrared sensor like you have in security lights and a camera in a waterproof box. And they are fantastic. It gives you an opportunity to have a constant presence anywhere you want, 24 hours of the day.
The camera trap proved crucial when Gordon was working in Bhutan. He went there to find out if tigers were living high up in the Himalayas. If they did, their chances of survival as a species would be much greater.
These little camera traps, they're giving us a little kind of peek through a keyhole into a very rich environment, a place that is more than capable of supporting tigers. Come on, just once. I don't even want a whole tiger. I just want a tail, a stripe, an ear, just something to tell me that tigers are here. I just so wanted to find tigers there. It was so important for the survival, the long-term survival of tigers as a species.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Oh, I don't believe it! Oh God! Oh! Thank you!
My reaction was just one of huge relief on so many different levels. I was completely overwhelmed. As a wildlife cameraman, there's a lot of sacrifice, and your family have to sacrifice a lot because you're away from home, and you only want to do that if it's worthwhile. And, when we found these tigers, I thought, no, this is almost a lot of the absences, a lot of the time I spent away from my wife and my kids. It's been worth it because we've done something really quite important.
The work of wildlife cameramen can help ensure the very survival of a species. These tenacious individuals work in difficult conditions to capture enduring images of the natural world. Images that can help safeguard its conservation.
I think you have to be kind of quite stubborn to just keep going relentlessly each day building this sequence.
A lot of it is tough, a lot of it is physically very demanding, mentally very demanding, and it's lonely and it can be boring. But on those rare occasions, and they are rare occasions when you look across your entire career, where you are able to get what you're after and capture something interesting, something unique, something never seen before on film, that's when I realise that I do have the best job in the world.
Next time, our cameramen are looking to the sky, filming flying devils in the Falklands, black kites on a dump in Delhi, and sharks looking for an easy meal.
couple shots.